Andy Johnson. The purpose of the Development Review Commission was created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has recommendatory power, and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of a proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, businesses, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interest of public health, safety, and general welfare. Any person aggrieved by a final decision of the Development Review Commission may file an appeal to the City Council within 14 calendar days after the Development Review Commission has rendered its decision. Development Review Commission recommendations to City Council are not final decisions. Tonight with us on the Commission, to my right, we have Commissioner Stefan Richter, Larry Tom, and Vice Chair Michelle Schwartz. To my left, Commissioner Joe Forte, Linda Spears, and alternate Commissioner Rhiannon Corbett. Tonight with us from staff, we have Jeff Tamalevich, Ryan Levake, Ambika Adharki, Michelle Dalkey, Diana Kaminsky, Karen Stovall, Jacob Payne, Lucas Jensen, Whitney Mayfield, Joanna Berry, and Jason Wolf. For members of the public wishing to speak tonight, you'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak, and staff will be monitoring the time. And as a note, we are online, but the WebEx chat box is not monitored or moderated. All right, so tonight on the agenda, we will have a consideration of meeting minutes from our study session and regular meeting of October 22nd, 2024, and a motion on the 2024 Development Review Commission annual report. Then we will hear our consent agenda, and during study session, we identified the items that we will have on the consent agenda. I'll read through that consent agenda, and if there's anyone here wishing to speak on one of those items, please get my attention, and we can pull that item from our consent agenda and hear it. And then we will have 3 items remaining that we will hear to round out the rest of the meeting. So to start, item number 2, 2A and 2B, Development Review Commission Study Session and Regular Meeting of October 22nd, 2024. Can I get a motion for the approval of those minutes? Okay, that's been moved by Commissioner Tom. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Schwartz. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Great, and that passes unanimously. And item number 2C, 2024 Development Review Commission Annual Report. Is that a motion to accept the report? Okay, so can I get a motion to accept the annual report? That's been moved by Commissioner Tom. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Richter. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and that also passes unanimously. Okay, tonight for our consent agenda, we have selected item 4B, Hall Residence. Anyone wishing to hear that one tonight? Okay. Item number 4D, Abraham Residence. Anyone here to speak on that tonight? Okay. Item number 4F, Girlings Edition. Okay, and item number 4G, Neptune Smoke. All right. Item number 6A, which is a code text amendment. All right, and then item number 6C, which is also a code text amendment. Okay, seeing no one wishing to speak on those items, we will maintain that as our consent agenda. So can I get a motion for the approval of our consent agenda? Okay, that's been moved by Commissioner Forte. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded by Commissioner Spears. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. All right, so we will now move on to the first item that we will be hearing tonight, which is item 4C, which is the East Valley Health, Housing, and Human Services Center. Would the applicant please come up and present your item tonight?
Oh, thank you so much. Good evening, Commission. My name is Mike Duffy, an Associate Principal with RSP Architects, and I've got Deborah from TCAA here, and we'd love to share with you about what we've been working on. I think to start, we'd love to share a little bit about TCAA as an organization and what we're hoping to do with this project.
Good evening, Chairman Johnson, fellow commissioners. I'm Deborah Artiaga. I'm the CEO at TCAA, and many of you are aware of Tempe Community Action Agency. We are Tempe's largest, most expansive, and longest-lasting nonprofit agency delivering human services to residents of Tempe and surrounding communities. We operate 9 different human services programs. All of those programs are designed to address poverty in our community, both causes and effects of poverty. All of the individuals that we serve in our programs are low-income households, whether they are a senior-led household, a family with children, or a single adult. Our programs are designed to address food insecurity in our community, housing instability, health and well-being, and economic mobility. Our 9 different programs have operated for many, many years. We started in 1966 in the very neighborhood that our presentation is regarding today.
Thank you so much. And to chat briefly about the design, I've had the pleasure of working with Deborah and her team for the better part of a year now. And one of the things, we've worked with nonprofits over the years, and one of the things that I think is common with a lot of them is they're doing great work in spaces that may not be purpose-built for them. And as it relates to the design and the built environment, I get so excited as a designer and architect to provide a positive impact to make what they do hopefully a little bit easier, and make people who occupy these spaces, be their best, do their best, and contribute to the community in a positive way. The building itself is comprised of 2 floors. We're just over 20,000 square feet. And the first floor is organized around a welcome center. So on the left there, you see kind of a welcome center. Another thing that's common, or another thing that's a reoccurring theme, is we're trying to do a lot with a little, so they serve an incredible need, and we're trying to make as efficient use of space as we can throughout the project. So that welcome center becomes the hub that connects to all the other services that they provide. Going clockwise around the left-hand side there, we've got a market-style pantry. We've got kitchen where there's food preparation, both on-site and off-site, a multi-purpose room that would support both dining on site as well as other multi-purpose functions. We've got a space for their economic mobility services, and then we've got care coordination as well. On the second floor, that welcome center becomes a double-story atrium in which connects the second floor to the ground floor. So we've got interconnected spaces that further enhance what's going on a day-to-day basis and really connect the uses on site and within the building. And on that second floor, we've got the shelter, we've got transitional housing, and then we've got the office space for the day-to-day operations of volunteers and running the business of TCAA. The site itself, we're off of Apache at the intersection of Lebanon. And a lot of things went into the planning of this site and the organization of the building in the context. Both taking into consideration the zoning requirements that have street frontage impacts that brings the building up close to Apache, but other things like trauma-informed design that help create important moments throughout the site to make sure we're removing stressors, we're creating safety and security both for the users of the site as well as the neighborhood. And environmental connections and access to natural light is another thing that's very important. The site plan itself, the building is centered with a circulation drive that wraps around to the south with the surface parking. There's an entrance at both the south of the building for vehicular access as well as pedestrians from the north, both connecting to that shared entrance space at the middle. Welcome center. Floor plans that give a little bit more detail about the layout of the spaces. Again, that welcome center being the center hub, some of the food services on the east side of the building, and then the care and economic mobility on the left. And then as you go up to the second floor, we can see that double height atrium that connects the first floor to the second floor, as well as shelter beds on the left-hand side, transitional housing on the southeast, and office space in the northeast. One of the things that became important early on as we developed the concepts for this project has been access to natural lighting. I think one of the things that's unfortunate with a lot of the spaces that we're trying to provide here is they have been underdone in the past, and we're trying to improve a lot of these spaces, and access to natural light became something that was really important to us. And so one of the defining features of the building on the east and west facade is this sawtooth shape that brings natural light into the building for both the shelter on the second floor, as well as bringing that natural light through the Welcome Center down to the first floor spaces as well. And then a couple of renderings. The materials for the building are concrete masonry unit at the base, storefront glazing, metal panel, and glass at the top. You can see some of those ribbon windows that bring light facing north, natural light through the space into the middle, and create a lot of natural light throughout the space. Another view from the west-hand side is you see one of the vehicular entrances, a couple of shots from the multi-purpose room with some outdoor space that could be used for events and things like that when the weather supports it. And then another view showing some of the loading spaces and things that will support the food service elements of the project. Thanks so much. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Were there any questions for the applicant? All right, I think
Would the question be coming from the audience?
no. Sorry, I should have mentioned this before. Anyone wishing to speak on an item tonight should fill out one of these forms and bring it up here to Ms. Berry. Okay, and so with that, thank you for your presentation, and we'll hear from staff now. So, Mr. Payne.
Good evening.
Hello.
Get my slides up. Awesome, thank you. Good evening, Chair Johnson, members of the commission. For the record, Jacob Payne, Senior Planner with the City of Tempe's Community Development Department. So the request before you for this item is a use permit to allow an institutional use that provides temporary housing, and a DPR for the new office, shelter, and associated services building that goes with it. The site that we're looking at tonight is along Apache at the south end of the intersection with Lebanon, close to where our boundary with the city of Mesa is located. As was shown in the applicant's presentation, the site is designed in this way, as shown. The building is centrally located. This is mainly to accommodate 50-foot setbacks for adjacent properties, and this comes from the Tempe Zoning and Development Code special use standards from section 3-413. Relating to the institutional use in which they're proposing. As you can see, the site also does have access control in the form of vehicular gates, as well as entrances that are forward-facing that direct you to the lobby of the building. This is a look at the landscaping plan along the street frontage. They're incorporating willow acacias and ghost gums to kind of give an overall plant palette that's very cohesive. And then along the property line to the west, those are sisu trees, which we think provide a good buffer for the multifamily apartment complex that's adjacent to the site in that direction. Here's a look at the floor plan. As was discussed, the first floor of the building is where there's the welcome lobby, and then some of those services associated with the use, such as their care coordination and other economic services. There's a market which faces Apache and interfaces with the street pedestrian area, as well as a kitchen and a multi-purpose room, which could be used for dining and other events. And then moving to the second floor, this is where located is the offices for the TCAA, as well as the shelter beds, which you can see take up the west side of the building. And then as pointed out, along the southeast corner of the building is where there's some units that have multiple beds for maybe units, family units of people that would be staying at the location. A look at the elevations. The material of the building, as you've seen, consists of mainly glazing and concrete masonry unit along the ground floor, which provides good differentiation of the building massing for the top floor, which is primarily of metal construct. As was shown, the building does have this sawtooth roof design that allows for some natural light into some of those interior spaces, as well as this kind of metal louvering that covers the windows to provide some solar protection from those windows as well. Here's those renderings that we've seen in their presentation as well. The one up on the upper left is from the front, and then the one to the bottom right is seen from interior of the site. Here's some images of the property as it is today. Some of you might know the property as the site of the Watson's Flower Building. That's what's being shown here in these images. Here's the use permit approval criteria. I won't go through this in depth since it's located in the report, but it's our opinion that it does meet these criteria. There's no neighborhood meeting required for a use permit or for a DPR, so one was not held. As of the creation of this PowerPoint, we've actually received 3 letters of support now, and then there was one letter that we received through the online portal that you should have gotten in your packet that was in opposition of the request. We're recommending approval subject to conditions, and I will show there's 3 unique conditions on this approval that we'll go over. So the first of those is development plan review approval condition number 4, which is having to do with dedicating cross-access easement. The purpose of this cross-access easement would be for future access to the city-owned property that's located to the east. The details about where the location of that will be sorted out at a later time, but due to the geography of the site to the east and the canal, it makes it very difficult for access in a different way. So that'll be handled at the point of which this project is in review for the subdivision of the lot. Development plan review condition number 9 has to do mainly with crime prevention through design. We feel that the front door being recessed so far invites itself for gathering. So it's a recommendation that we impose this condition to move the door forward to align with the front face of the building as to not encourage such activity along the street front. And then the last unique condition, number 20, has to do with a breeze block vestibule that's located in the front of the building. As shown in the renderings, there's just solid block with spacing. We feel that it would be a better design for public safety and transparency and connectivity on the pedestrian frontage if some actual block with a void breeze block were incorporated into that design to some extent, just so that the wall is more permeable and you can get a better idea of what's happening behind it to try and discourage bad activity. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission has.
Any questions for staff? So I have one quick question. The access to the east, that's undefined at this point.
That's correct.
So basically, they'll have a couple parking spaces that they'll need to give up so that they can provide that access to the east?
Chair Johnson, yes, that's correct. The details of where exactly that'll be located and the implications on parking will be determined at a future time.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll begin the public portion of this meeting. Was there anyone here wishing to speak on this item? Oh, he's wishing to, okay, sorry. I do have one. I was thinking this was for another item. So we do have one person wishing to speak. Mr. Redmond. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure. Chairman Johnson, Commissioners, Tempe staff. I'm Charles Redmond, a Tempe resident for 41 years. I just want to say a few sentences to express my enthusiasm for this project and my excitement that the Commission is actually hearing a project that's working to help the city become a better place. I think you heard from Mike and Deborah about the aspects and the details of it. I just wanted to reinforce a couple things. One is that this is an agency that's been around for 60 years and is solid and a point of pride for our city. The other is we estimate this year, or they estimate, that it will serve 35,000 people. It's an emergency number, 1 out of 7 people in Tempe benefit from this agency's activities. What we also heard is the agency is forced to carry out its activities in 5 different locations, none of which are built for the activity that's done. So there's a lot of adjusting and inefficiencies going on. And what we're looking at now is a one-stop hub for human services that I think will also become a visible symbol to the city of human services because it's a distinctive and I think attractive building. The other advantage, it isn't just efficiency, but you're able to, I think the right term is wraparound services. That is, people who come for one thing see that there's advice on health or there's advice on jobs or advice on housing at the same place they're getting a lunch or something like that, and I think that's important. I think the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is they're doubling the food pantry space, but there's a greater innovation involved. Food pantries generally work by putting food in a bag and giving you a bag, and you maybe get one choice, but usually not. This is designed like a grocery store. It's what people are calling sort of dignity-enhancing food distribution. Instead of just giving people a bag, they go shopping for what they want. It's easy to reach by light rail and by bus, so I hope it contributes to the Tempe 20 minutes. And I do believe it will become a symbol for the city of Tempe of its concern for citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, was there anyone tonight wishing to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none. I'm not sure if, usually we invite the applicant back up if you want to address any comments you've heard, but those were all very glowing. That was a glowing report. So if you had anything else you wish to add, you can do so at this time. If not, we're happy to move on.
Addressing some of the recommendations now.
Sure.
Yep.
Just that first recommendation about making access possible to the adjacent lot that's owned by the city, not by TCAA. By giving up 2 parking spaces, that may seem minimal, and when you look at the report, we've planned more than the minimum number required for that space because of the volume of people that we serve. And so giving up 2 spaces means making the parking more difficult for clients served by the agency. Now, if we're able to make access to that adjoining lot possible for overflow parking for our site, and we can reach agreement on that with the city, we would be happy to consider that.
Excellent.
And I would maybe add on the block, the comment there I think is heard, and we've been addressing that as well in the current designs. I would maybe ask, similarly, I think we're open to addressing the front door, but at the same time, I think the goal there is to provide some relief in a vestibule there. Understand there's the perceived public safety concern with creating an alcove that someone can hide, but immediately behind there is glazing, and this is a facility that will be maintained 24 hours and be surveilled and things like that. So we think that the benefit provided with a vestibule and sort of a transition into the building outweighs the potential public safety concerns in having that space recessed. So I know that, I don't know if there's, now's the right time for the dialogue. So we're open to investigate that still, but I think there still is a benefit that we would like to pursue in recessing that to provide the transition.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Payne, did you want to comment on either of those items? I guess one thing I would say is if there's space in that condition of approval for the access to the east that may allow for that discussion to continue between the city and TCAA. I think it allows that. I'm hoping it allows that.
I have a question. Maybe we can address
Commissioner Tom, sure.
Is it possible to adjust that condition to allow for cross-access and cross-park or shared parking?
I think as part of Diana Kaminsky, Principal Planner, Chair and Commission members, I think the requirement for cross-access was something that was addressed with them through preliminary site plan review and through our review process. in terms of any negotiation with future use to the east, we can't make those negotiations as part of this project. As part of their entitlement process, that is one of the requirements of the design, is that they provide that cross-access. And with regard to the other condition with the recessed doorway, although the red line that was shown on the condition showed it flush, if they wanted to have that recessed back for some articulation of the building, maybe 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches would be sufficient, but PD made it very clear that the amount of depth that they were showing was something they were not supportive of.
Go ahead first.
Commissioner Richter.
What would be the depth that the police department would be okay with?
I think 12 to 18 inches. The idea that you can have some recessed from the street front, but not enough that it could become a loitering place.
Okay. I would just add that it's probably important to have a little bit of recess there for shelter at the front door of the building. So if everyone else agrees that 18 to 24 inches is enough, then
No,
that
12
works.
to 18 inches.
Sorry, 12 to 18 inches.
Not deep enough that you can
Sure.
loiter there, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so looking at those two items, so understood on the, at least from my perspective, understood on the site to the east. It's a difficult parcel, and we do want the city to do something with that parcel, so having that access is very important, I think.
It is.
So I'm okay with item number 4. I'm willing to entertain other comments though. But item number 9, I think we would need to amend, or condition number 9, I think we need to amend that. It says moving the front door of the building north as to not be recessed from the front plane of the building. So
It could be with working with staff on
so
flexibility.
minimizing
design to
the
minimize
recess? Yeah.
recess.
You got that captured? Vice Chair? All right.
Any other questions?
Commissioner Tom?
On the cross-access agreement, can you explain to us why that is needed? Why are we requiring this as a condition?
So this parcel, typically we would have one driveway per property. And this area does have a lot of pedestrian and bicycle traffic, and there's a lot of transit use as well. So limiting driveway access is important for all of the other modes of transportation that we have. They're getting 2 driveways. The property to the east is encumbered because of the location of the driveway they're proposing, as well as the canal. So you have a pinch point now that affects the property that the city owns in how we can develop it. So in order for them to have their 2 driveways and have access on that east side for the wraparound around the building they designed, we need to be able to provide access to our property to the east.
And the city would not be supportive of including a cross-parking agreement in this condition?
Not at this time, because we do not have a development to the east. We don't want to encumber our property. We don't even know what that's going to be yet.
So we're willing to encumber this property, though?
As part of their request for what they're asking for, yes. At such time that we have a development to the east, then we'll be able to address that cross-access and any needs they have. We need to have demonstrated need as well for their parking. If their customers are coming by transit or bike or pedestrian, we don't know that the parking will be an issue until they're in and operating.
If I could also clarify too, at one point in time, this project had a much bigger scope. And then the property to the east, the city of Tempe property, was part of the project site. And so there was plans to develop it in coordination with the city. But at the later stages of the process, the applicant chose not to go through those federal obligation requirements that the city of Tempe property, which how it was acquired, had to go through those processes. So they couldn't put any of their facilities or required parking on the property site and had to leave that separate from this development process. But what we didn't want to do is create a situation where now we had a remaining property that didn't have access to Apache because of the slopes of the street, And it felt appropriate if there was a shared access agreement in play with both of the properties, then there could be that future opportunity to redevelop at some point in time, whatever the project may be, whether it's a city-issued RFP or the property sells to a future owner. We just don't know at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Spears?
I wanted to make that point as well, that originally the city was part of this, the city land was part of this, and the city withdrew that. And so, my humble opinion, it's the city's problem, not this project's problem. And it does make sense that there's some kind of agreement that's beneficial to both parties, allowing access to the party, but not hamstringing this property because the city needs to provide access.
Other comments? Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the discussion. And now we will move to commissioner discussion. So, any other comments? I think we need to, well, I'm entertaining motions. If there's a request for modification to any of the motions, please make that clear in your motion. Commissioner Spears?
I think that the requirement is reasonable for the setback in terms of whatever is acceptable for police, if it's 12 or 18 inches. But I do think that the cross easement needs to be such that it's a mutually agreed upon solution. I'd be happy to make that motion if you want.
Well, let's see if there's more discussion. I have the opinion that I think not knowing what's going to happen with that parcel makes it a little bit difficult, and I liked Ms. Kaminsky's point about not knowing the parking demands of the building necessarily, future parking demands needed, and I don't want to tie some future unknown project down with sharing parking that might not even be needed. So I guess that's where my thought process is. But I'm willing to entertain any motions, and we can vote on them. So, Commissioner Spears?
I move for the approval of PL 240265 with the two conditions that the setback be within 12 to 18 inches of the face of the building, and that the shared use agreement be negotiated at a future time.
Okay, so item number 9 would be amended to include a recess of up to 18 inches. And condition of approval number 9 would be amended to include a recess of up to 18 inches and condition of approval number 4 would include another sentence detailing a future shared use, shared use parking agreement. Okay. Yes. Do we have that clear enough? Yes, okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Richter, moved by Commissioner Spears. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and that passes unanimously. All right, so moving on to item number 5B, which is Nova Tempe. Would the applicant please present your case? welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Nick Wood, Snell and Wilmer 1, Arizona Center, and I represent Up Campus.
Mr. Woods, there's a clicker here.
Thank you.
And before you start, I want to say we appreciate conciseness and maintaining a timely presentation of your materials.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've been asked to do this in less than 15 minutes. Being a lawyer and part Italian, it's not going to be easy, but
Appreciate that.
I'll certainly do the best I can. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the site is located at the southeast corner of the intersection of University Drive and Rural. As you can see, to the east of us, you recently approved an 18-story mixed-use development, and south of us, across both the railroad easement and 8th Street, was an approved mixed-use development of 24 stories. So in our discussions with staff, as we put this application together, the idea was to build something in between the 18 stories and the 24 stories of the two approved projects. So we're basically at 20 stories. This is the site. I think you're all very familiar with it. We've got a Chevron station on the corner. There's several different parcels that make up this center, and our client spent some time assembling all of these, getting into purchase and sale agreements for each one of the separate parcels. The current general plan, of course, is mixed use, more than 65 dwelling units per acre, and as staff mentioned in the staff report, the idea is that these end up being taller buildings simply because of the density that's permitted. We're changing the zoning from CSS, Commercial Shopping Center, to the MU4 PAD. Here's our project data. We have a large site. It's 3.69 gross acres, 950 total units, bedroom breakdown of 2,391. You can see that, the market continues to evolve for student housing. We have 319 studios. Of course, more of your upper-class men, upper-class women are looking really for, individual units rather than sharing units with others. We have 41 bedrooms. We have 132 twos. And then, of course, 68 threes and 391 fours. We're at 20 stories. Lot coverage is only 56%. I brought so many different student housing projects before you, and most of them have lot coverage that, and even non-student housing projects, lot coverage that approaches 100% or 90%, et cetera, and this is at 56%. We're parking it as required under the code at 967, which is a ratio of 0.35 per bed. And here's a very interesting element to this. We have 15,000 square feet of retail. Almost all of the projects, in fact, all of the projects I've brought before you and that you usually see, don't have this much of a percentage of retail. But this is a hard corner, and there's a demand for retail in this area, so we've been able to design it in a way to accommodate the retail. Site plan, several things jump out at you. One is the landscape plan along both rural as well as university. You hear me talk about the 20 by 20, right? The pedestrian realm, 20 feet of depth from the building and then 20 feet of height. Well, here, for example, we have 40 feet of distance from back of curb along University to the building itself. And again, we have 10-foot sidewalks and lots of landscaping on rural as well. We have active space on the rooftops of the two buildings. As you can see, two of the towers are 20 stories, and then we have a 10-story parking structure. When we do these projects, we like to combine active space. Usually it's on the roof, and then more passive space at ground level. So as you can see, we have a tremendous amount of space in between the buildings at the lower level. And we have some active passive rooftop, like a running track and other things on top of the garage itself. As far as traffic circulation is concerned, we've gone through a number of iterations because it is a corner. So, for example, we have 3 curb cuts. We have one curb cut on rural at the south part of the site with a 24-foot wide drive aisle. We have another curb cut on the far eastern side of the property. The idea was your streets and transportation folks wanted us to make sure we have a curb cut right across the street from the one that's on the north side of the road. And of course, this actually passes through the garage. And then, of course, we have another curb cut that's just to the west of the easternmost, and that's for fire. Working with fire to have access to the site, we have a very high clearance area for fire to come in and out of the site. One of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we have pickup and drop-off areas for Uber and for Lyft. So we have added two of them that you can see on the screen. One is at the southern side of Residential Tower 2. You can see the number 9 there. That's a pickup and drop-off area. The idea is you always want to have them pull and pick up and drop off on the right side of the car. So we have one there. We have another one between the parking garage and the residential tower. That one's much wider, much bigger. It allows for a lot of turning radius. And then we'll have another one within the garage itself. Obviously, we'll have lots of cover and other things. The other thing is we're going to have a very enhanced bus stop right there on the corner, as well as multimodal elements. We'll have bikes, we'll have scooters, and other things that are available. This is the first floor plan. As you can see, all of the retail, we anticipate that these will end up being different types of restaurants, coffee shops, and other things. We have one in several of the buildings. We have lots of outdoor dining around, and we have covered outdoor dining around, and I'll show you some of that in a moment. Parking deck. One of the things that's really important is if you're going to have retail and you're going to have visitors, that you have lots of parking. So the first ground level, we have 88 parking spaces that are there and open for both the retail as well as for visitors to the project itself. Here's the architecture. We'll be back, obviously, with a development plan review that'll show much more detail than what we're showing here. And our architect is here if you have any questions for him. But I love the colors, I love the articulation, I love the style. As you can see at the ground level, we have that enhanced pedestrian area. Even the column design are angular, and I'll show you a little bit more about that. But there's a lot of depth, a lot of shade, a lot of visual interest, a lot of movement throughout this building as well as the one that's behind it toward the back. Roof movement, depth. Again, because this is student housing, we have no balconies. It's really critically important that we do that. With respect to, this is the view that would be on rural. As you can see, even the movement of the surface of this building on your right, because it's on an angle along rural. So basically, you see the depth, the steps, the different colors. There is no EIFS or anything else on this. This is all really high-end materials. And again, we'll come with the material board when we bring our development plan review to you. But you can see, that first and second level at the ground level, again, with the design and the landscaping. This is the area along University. As I mentioned, it's 40 feet from back of curb to the building front. We have a sidewalk, 10-foot sidewalk. That's, of course, a detached sidewalk from the curb. And then we have landscape islands in between. And then we have another set of sidewalk area between that and the building itself. And then we have covered area for sidewalk and for outdoor dining. As you can see, we have a tremendous amount of glass. We have balconies above, and we have a lot of hanging landscaping. Okay, it's very unique. I was able to do one of the Optima projects, Optima Kierland, and as you know, Optima is pretty well known to have landscaping hanging down from balconies and things, and that's one of the things they're going to do here. You can see some of the design elements, the unique design elements. The ceiling, again, being metal panels that look, like wood. The columns, as I mentioned, the columns are angular. They don't come straight down. They actually come in, again, to create, a really high quality, high-end development. Here is, the separation of the two buildings along rural. As you can see, we have lots of movement along the sidewalk, lots of shade, lots of outdoor dining, lots of vegetation on top. The architecture, again, is quite lovely and very unique. I was very impressed with the architect's work on this. Here's a shot of the corner. As I mentioned, there is the bus stop. And of course, along the area on this side of the bus stop, we'll have, areas for, scooters and bikes and other things on the corner itself. Here's another shot. This is, long rural looking to the northeast. Again, you can see some of the restaurant space, the balcony, the landscaping. It's a pretty special design and a special building. And I think all of the design elements that we've included are pretty special. I think I made it. We're fine with the stipulations proposed by staff, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might ask.
Any questions for the applicant? Well, thank you, Mr. Woods.
Thank you.
That was very efficient. We do appreciate that. And now I'd like to invite staff up to Ms. Stovall to present for the city.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Karen Stovall, Senior Planner in the Planning Division. I went too far. So this site is located at the southeast corner of Rural and University, and the applications include a zoning map amendment from CSS TOD to MU4 TOD, and a new planned area development overlay to establish development standards for a proposed 20-story mixed-use development on 3.61 acres. The project will contain 950 dwelling units and a density of 257 dwelling units per acre. The unit types range from a studio up to 4 bedrooms, and the project will have over 14,000 square feet of commercial uses on the ground floor. The PAD proposes a maximum building height of 237 feet, maximum lot coverage of 56%, a minimum landscape area of 52%, and that includes open space on 3 amenity decks. And the PAD also proposes a vehicle parking ratio of 0.35 spaces per bedroom, with a total of 979 spaces provided. The current TOD overlay would actually require 2,140 parking spaces. The applicant has submitted a parking analysis to support the reduction in the number of spaces. The plan depicts 2 20-story buildings with driveways on Rural and University. The driveway on University has been designed to align with the existing driveway into the Cornerstone Shopping Center on the north side of the street. The applicant worked with our transportation division to hopefully create a signalized intersection for better vehicular flow and safer pedestrian crossings across University. And there will be a secondary driveway for fire and refuse access further west on University. The parking structure would contain all the vehicle parking spaces for the project, and the plans also show a pedestrian connection to 8th Street from the south side of the project, and that was something that the city had requested from the developer. A development plan review application is not being processed concurrent with these applications. However, the applicant has provided renderings to demonstrate the proposed character. A neighborhood meeting was required and was held in September of this year. 3 individuals attended and did not express any concerns. Planning did receive 1 email in support, and the individual actually expressed a desire to see higher density and higher buildings, and also requested a bike and pedestrian connection between the project and 8th Street. We are recommending approval of the request subject to the conditions. There are 2 unique conditions. The first one, since the DPR is not being processed at this time, the first one is that the DPR be made within 2 years of City Council approval of these requests. And the second is that the traffic impact study be submitted with the forthcoming DPR application. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? I am glad to hear that we are discussing a signal crossing at University. That would be on the east side of the project?
Yes. So it would be directly adjacent to the east property line. Yes. So
Directly adjacent to the east property line. Does that align with the driveway entrance to the?
Across the street
Across
on
the
the north
street?
side of University. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So originally that driveway was where the fire and refuse driveway is, but transportation requested it to be aligned again they're knowing that there's going to be a high traffic flow and knowing that even at this time, there are a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists crossing University, not at the signal at Rural.
Mm-hmm. And then the other comment you made that caught my attention, and I saw it in Mr. Wood's presentation, but the connection to the future path along 8th Street.
Yes, yes. So the applicant will need to work with Transit and also our historic preservation officer on the design of that, since the land south of this property has been deemed archaeologically sensitive. So.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Vice Chair Schwartz.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to be seeing the DPR today. I understand that. I think in the past, that process was reserved maybe for projects that were being brought forth by the city. I guess maybe just understanding why we're seeing that separation in this case.
Yes, so City Council actually allowed a policy for applicants to allow for the Community Development Department to allow applicants to process them separately. As far as this project goes, the applicant notified us that it was a timing issue. They are trying to get all of the property owners, there are 8 different parcels involved, trying to get all the property owners to agree on this development and hoping that this could be approved by the end of the year. Or it was possible that they wouldn't all be able to work together if it was not approved by then. So.
And then on the other condition of approval for the revised traffic study, what are we looking for different in the revised version versus what we've already seen as a part of this packet?
Yeah, so what the applicant submitted originally had that driveway farther west. So the revised traffic study will need to account for traffic flows with the new driveway location directly adjacent to the east property line. So they've already made that agreement with transportation. It's just that they didn't have time to update the TIS in time to go to this hearing.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spears?
I want to understand, did you say that the applicant does not currently have control of all the properties?
Chairperson and Commissioner, the applicant has agreements from all the property owners. We have the property owner authorization to process these. It was more of a timing issue. The owners wanted the approval by the end of the year, and they might have not agreed to further processing had this gone into next year.
So what happens when the rezoning gets approved and something happens and a property falls out?
I would probably need to defer that to the applicant to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions for staff? Thank you. So we can table that question for Mr. Woods, but is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item tonight? I don't have any cards submitted. Okay, seeing none, Mr. Woods, would you mind addressing that question?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Spears, we have multiple sellers. One of the sellers was very adamant that we want you to purchase this property before the end of the year. The reason is for tax planning. You know, we've just gone through one of the worst elections I've been able to watch. And of course, there's so much uncertainty what's going to happen to the tax code in 2025, no matter who's in control. So they made it real clear, and contractually, we have to have the zoning in place, not the DPR, just the zoning in place, and then we have to close and acquire the property before the end of the year. So that's why this is important to do.
Any other questions for Mr. Woods while we got him? Okay, thanks, sir. All right, with that, we will move to commissioner discussion. So, comments? Commissioner Spears?
Obviously, I have reservations about this, and I don't like processing zoning changes without having a DPR along with it. We have other large parcels in Tempe that have been trying to redevelop for years now, and just when they think they have a deal, then they don't have a deal, it falls apart. So I'd rather see this come back as one request, understanding the nature of the problem. But that, I'm not comfortable processing a zoning change when we don't know what the building is really going to look like.
Did you have a comment, Ms. Stockey?
I apologize, I don't want to interrupt you. I think staff, we understand the importance of the DPRs. When they come through with the zoning map amendments, it helps us see the full picture. But it's not a requirement in the zoning and development code for the DPR to be processed with the zoning amendment. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that and you're reminded of that when you make any decisions.
Thank you. Other discussion? Commissioner Richter?
This request is basically an approval or a disapproval of effectively just the zoning and not any architectural character or any other narrative that's technically not part of like the densities, the heights, and other site data. Is that correct?
Excuse me, it's the zoning map amendment and the planned area development overlay. So the PAD gives us the comfort level of the density and the parking and such. And then they gave us the renderings that we felt very comfortable with. We worked very closely with them on that. So you're right, the DPR is where the design will be finalized and the site plan.
As a follow-up question, the renderings, though, are part of the approval or not part of the approval?
Well, the renderings and the illustrative, we'll say the illustrative site plan, they are exhibits to this proposal, so we consider them part of this proposal.
Okay, thank you.
So they are part of this proposal, they're part of the approval, part of the record, but they don't necessarily reflect what could eventually come back to us.
The final design will come through with the DPR case. The exhibits they provide us, we gave them very strong comments on what we were looking for. And as Karen mentioned in her presentation in the staff report, that we had, I mean, she had several, see, I just wanted to point her out to page 2 of her staff report, all of the different bulleted items that she really went into specifics with them on the site layout, the building design. So I think they're very clear, the applicant, what staff is expecting with the DPR. But again, yes, this application is the zoning map amendment, the PAD overlay, and the other items are exhibits to their application. I hope I've answered your question.
And you've added a time limit on this as well.
Correct, right. They have to come back within 2 years of city council approval, or the zoning can be reverted back to the current zoning. So that's one safeguard that we have. And they can also ask, I'm sorry, one addition, they can also ask for time extensions if they get close to that 2-year limit, which is something that we see with other applicants. It just depends upon the circumstances.
Other comments? Questions, motions? Vice Chair?
With those time limits, I mean, is there a way to restrict extensions or other methods like that to try to make sure that the development is moved forward in the fashion as we're seeing today?
I mean, excuse me, something different than our recommended 2 years, where they would have to come back within 1 year? Is that something?
Yeah, and I guess what I also heard is, yes, it's 2 years as a condition of approval, but that we oftentimes, if they're close to the 2 years, that we're going to give extensions additionally.
Well,
So you're commenting on the extensions, not necessarily the 2
Yeah,
year.
I mean, both.
Both, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I can add some color.
Yep.
With your permission, I can add some.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, we're happy to reduce that period of time to 1 year, for example. We're working on all of the submittals right now. They'll probably be in within the next 30 to 60 days. So we'll be back before you with the DPR, certainly next year. So if you want to limit it to 1 year, and you won't see changes to what I just showed you, right? But we just have to refine things to finalize them for submittal. I wouldn't dare show up with a totally different design. So, yeah, but we're happy to limit it to a year if you'd like to do that.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Do you have something, Commissioner Tom?
Yeah, I am comfortable with approval of this PAD with the height and the density as proposed. The DPR coming in later, a year or two later, we're going to see it, right? And the applicant has discussed the proposed elevations and has just come up and said, we're going to design this as we propose today. I am very comfortable with what's proposing and with the conditions as submitted by staff. If there's no other questions, I'll be more than happy to make a motion.
Let's hear it.
I move to approve PL 240345. I said that number right? Okay. As proposed with the conditions recommended by staff.
Okay, a motion has been presented for approval. Is there a second? Okay.
I second.
Commissioner Forte has been seconded by Commissioner Forte. All those in favor, will you please raise your hand? Okay, and those opposed? Okay, so that motion passes with Commissioner Forte, Commissioner Corbett, myself, Commissioner Tom, and Commissioner Richter in the affirmative, and Commissioner Spears and Vice Chair Schwartz in opposition. Okay, with that, we are moving on to item number 6B. Mr. Mbika.
Good evening, Chair and the Commissioner members. My name is Ambika Adhikari, Community Development Principal Planner. With me is Jacob Payne, Senior Planner of the same department. You've heard our presentation before, and it was in a public setting, so we'll make it very brief. This is the adaptive reuse of commercial, office, and mixed-use buildings, the HB 2297 of the state of Arizona. And we will just provide you quick highlights and also the draft code that is in the packet. And then we'll show you the meeting and adoption timeline and any questions and input that you might have. The highlights of this particular mandate is there is an implicit purpose on this particular bill to increase the supply of housing. This is like a nationwide thing that is going on. So Arizona is also picking up on that one. So that requires the municipalities with a population of more than 150,000 people to allow multifamily use in not more than 10% of the existing commercial, office, and mixed-use buildings without any public hearing requirements, and those like the rezoning and PAD application, and we'll show you a map later on for that one. It also allows us to designate up to 10% of such buildings to be excluded from the provision of this section if we wanted to protect any of the commercial or the employment centers. And both these percentages could be reviewed every 10 years. And then there are criteria in the bill about the development standards and conditions of adaptive development, that it does require site plan review approval is the way that we do it. And it also requires that the applicants demonstrate that there is adequate sewer and water services. And then, of course, it has to comply with building and fire code. And then, very importantly, the application has to demonstrate that the buildings are economically or functionally obsolete, and there's a definition to that. Economical obsolescence is more than 50% vacancy for more than 1 year. And then the functional obsolescence is the disrepair of the building. The site has to be minimum 1 acre, maximum 2 acres to qualify for adaptive reuse. And very importantly, they have to set aside at least 10% of the units in the new development for the moderate or low income housing. The other standards relate to demolition and the parking and so on. If they meet all the criteria, the city has to grant them demolition for the whole building or the partial building. And then also the parking has to basically comply with the other multifamily building requirements. And there are 2 other standards. If it is existing building, the setbacks and the building heights become legal non-conforming. They stay as they are. If they are a new building, then the maximum height is limited to 5-story, and there are certain other criteria on how it is to do it. And then if it is within 100 feet of a single family zoning land, the height is limited to only 2-story. And the existing building, I already talked about that. And there are some exemptions on the bill that are basically historically designated buildings and sites, and also anything that is within the 60 day and night level contour or noise contour of the airport and any tribal land. And there are a couple maps that Jacob will speak to.
Yeah, so like Ambika mentioned, this bill is referring to our existing stock of mixed use commercial and office buildings. So this map on the left side is a look at that catalog that the city has currently. You can see up at the top right of that map, our number is looking like 2,530, give or take, with the buildings. So when we talk about these numbers of 10% that we would allow reuse or new multifamily developments, that magic number for us for the next 10 years is 252 buildings. As Ambika mentioned, there's also some statutory exclusion areas. That's what's shown on the map to the right. Those red areas are the City of Tempe's historically designated properties and districts, as well as the airport vicinity. As you can see, that sweeping pink blob right over our head. So taking those areas out, that brings the number of buildings that would be potentially eligible to 2,180. Those buildings would still have to demonstrate that they are functionally or economically obsolete, as well as being located on a parcel that is between 1 and 20 acres and having an adequate water and sewer supply as well. As Ambika mentioned, in addition to those areas that are statutorily exempt, the city also has the ability to designate additional exclusion areas up to 10%, which is what this ordinance is proposing to do. The map in front of you showing those cross-hatched areas as the optional areas that the City of Tempe is looking to exclude from this bill, and those gray areas, again, being those that were exempt from the bill itself. So the area shown in the hatching being our optional exclusion area contains 252 of those existing buildings in our inventory.
Okay, thanks, Jacob. So we did have a couple of public meetings. We also went to the commission and we heard a few things. There were 2 opinions about the 2-story limit that the city was thinking of imposing. One person actually thought, and I think they will be speaking today also, that limiting it to 2-story will not actually help increase the supply of housing. But there was another school of thought by some other people that yes, we do have to limit it to 2-story if it is within 100 feet of a single family zoning to protect the single family areas from the multifamily development. So they were both points of view. And then also the map that the Jacob showed was also based on partly the public comment that if you could protect some of the areas that are close to the neighborhood where people shop and where people have some, like business activities that they have, that will be very useful for them. And that's why all these arterial intersection areas that Jacob showed on the map is something that we propose to protect. And those were the main things. And we've submitted a draft of the ordinance. We also made it public for people to make any comment. It has gone through all the internal processes. And it is basically, there is a preamble, there's a purpose of the code, and there are different headings that the code is put on with the verification that the owner and the applicant has to provide, and also what are the standards that they have to meet We also included the definitions and kind of, expanded the definition a little more into the code. And then also that map that is going to be part of the code is the third map that Jacob showed. The first two maps are more for information and to get the number 250, the magic number that we could actually allow for redevelopment and allow for exclusion. But the third map is going to be part of the code that shows which areas are excluded. And based on that, there was a very compressed timeline for this particular bill. We started this process in August and we have had meetings. We came to you earlier in the joint meeting 2 weeks ago, went to the Neighborhood Advisory Commission meeting. We had 2 public meetings. And then today we are here with you for your recommendation. And then actually next week on 21st, we go to the City Council first hearing and December 19th, the second hearing, because our deadline is to make it effective before January 1. With that, if there are any questions, we're very happy to respond to that.
Any questions for staff? Vice Chair? Commissioner Tom. First, then Vice Chair.
The 100-foot within a single-family district, is that from property line or is that from building?
That's actually from the property line of the single-family lot.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, so part of the bill says they won't require public hearing. Once this project comes forward to redevelop, how will you handle those zoning changes?
Vice Chair Schwartz, I can answer that. So there won't be any zoning changes. This would happen irrespective of zoning or general plan designation. That was part of the line of reasoning behind where we were selecting exemptions as well. Those are commercial corners that were identified to not have residential density in the general plan, just because this adaptive reuse avenue is kind of a way to essentially build things that would not conform to those plans adopted by the city. But to answer your question about how we would process it, we are still able to process administrative design applications for these types of projects. And moving forward, that would be the method that we would go about for doing it. It's just that this bill would specifically exclude, redevelopments that use this particular part of our new ordinance for development that they can't be heard at a public hearing.
Yeah. Having said that, it will go through the process of the site plan review and also the development plan review.
And then I guess one follow-up, I saw reference like maximum allowable density. So as we talk about that, then which code are we really, or which designation would we be using then for calculating the allowable density?
Vice Chair Schwartz, so the way that the bill is written is that for the building height, other than the hard cap at 5 stories, the building height and density are both related to the nearest multifamily district. It says within a mile, but then it says even if it's further than a mile. So it's really just the nearest multifamily district. So that would be the standard of both the building height allowable and the density that we would be looking to review for the particular site.
Except that if the building is already existing and if they don't want to demolish that, then that building height becomes legal non-conforming.
Right.
Thank you for working through all these details being put on our city. Thanks.
Crystal ball, do we see a lot of appetite for this? I mean, we're going to expect to see a lot of...
We've been having some internal discussion. I think there was an effort in City of Phoenix to do this, but they did not have much luck. This was before this bill came along. And we know that the White House had actually promulgated a report about 2 years ago to provide some additional mortgage financing and also technical support because they want to increase the supply of housing across the country. And we do think there are some buildings, especially maybe the low-end hotels and few other buildings, which might be ripe, but it is still up to the applicants if it makes sense. What I, for example, have personally seen is if there's a really high rent and high cost of housing in some cities, then it becomes much more attractive for them. For us, it might take a little bit of time, but we'll see.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you
so much.
With that, we'll move on to public comments. If anyone from the audience is wishing to speak on this, please fill out a form and bring it up to Ms. Berry. I know we do have somebody online who wishes to speak, so
Yeah, I'm going to unmute David Sokolowski right now.
Mr. Sokolowski, whenever you are ready.
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Sokolowski, please state your name and city of residence, and your comments will be heard.
My name is David Sokolowski. I live in Tempe. Tempe should not restrict affordable housing within 100 feet of a single-family home. I can list projects in Tempe that have been approved, and it doesn't make sense to have a standard that is higher than what is currently allowed. That's the opposite of a density bonus program. We need up to 30,000 low-income units by 2050. Under HB 2297, Tempe is allowed to require 10% inclusionary zoning. That means we need to leverage this to the best of our ability. Tempe will need to build up to 300,000 units, and neighborhoods will need to change. This is our only option because Tempe can't afford to spend $200 million per year. We need to meet the expectations of SB 1162 for housing needs assessment and eliminate any deficiencies in housing for our city. If that means building 300,000 units on 40 square miles of land, then that's what we need to do. Imagine you're a state representative. Do you think the character of a neighborhood is going to take precedent over our ability to pay rent? The state is taking away local control, and Tempe opposed it. People want to preserve the character of their neighborhood, but our cities need housing. Every city in our state will need to contribute their fair share of affordable housing. Because of SB 1162, the state is going to realize that Tempe will need 200 years to build affordable housing. If I'm wrong, Tempe should show us its housing plan to complete 30,000 units below 80% AMI. Tempe doesn't have a housing plan, and the city is in denial. There are two basic options: accept development now or wait for the floodgates to open. The state will come back with a builder's remedy. That means automatic approval until we produce the units. Allowing development now will serve as a strong defense to prevent the use of a builder's remedy in Tempe. We need to mass produce affordable housing at scale or risk losing local control forever. It's unacceptable for Tempe to have a double standard that only applies to affordable housing and not market rate projects. It's unacceptable to have arbitrary standards on development, which are not based on the health, safety, or the general welfare of our community. Shadows are not dangerous. Tempe is supposed to be a leader in affordable housing, and it's unacceptable to have a 200-year timeline. That's unworkable, and it's negligent. A builder's remedy is inevitable. It's the only way to get the entire state rowing in the same direction, because most cities are incapable of being objective while solving a statewide housing crisis. This commission has a responsibility to make sure that our city builds the housing that we need, and it's very clear that Tempe should not have a 100-foot buffer from single-family homes. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other comments cards, so with that, would staff like to address any of what was just said?
Chair and Commissioner members, the 100-feet, the gap between the single-family residence and the new development is only if there is a new building that the applicant is proposing, then we can implement that. If there's an existing building, then obviously whatever setback is there remains as it is. So it is something that we heard from the people both ways, and we do have a protection right now for any multifamily and commercial development. If it is being built even right now, there is like a separation requirement from the single family area of 30 feet. And then even after that, there's a 45-degree angle just to provide some protection for the single family development. So I think that proposal of that 100 feet from this single family zoning to the new building that they propose, I think is a reasonable protection. I don't think it actually limits any development potential of the site at all. And these are kind of adaptive reuse of some existing buildings. These are not like universally acceptable and universally applicable phenomena. So I think, as we heard from the comment, I don't think it's really going to make that kind of impact on the provision of housing. That's what we think.
Any follow-up for staff while we've got them? Okay, Thank you very much. With that, we will close our public comment period and move on to commissioner discussion or motions. And I'm going to stay silent until I hear one. Commissioner Spears.
I move for the approval of PL 240388.
Okay, Commissioner Spears has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
No. Jinx.
That was right. That was stereo. Seconded by Vice Chair. So with that, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. Okay, with that, we move on to announcements. Commission member, anything from commission announcements wise? Nothing? Okay. City staff announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we'll just see you on December 10th at your next meeting.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Again, our next commission meeting is December 10th, 2024, and we are adjourned. Thank you.